Welcome to Cabra Matters, because Cabra matters to God and to us. Now I'm Will, and I'm joined with pastors Hien and Rob, and our purpose is to encourage God's people and God's church in Cabra and anyone else who's tuning in with His Word. Each week we will have our hearts open and our Bibles open to have a chat about the upcoming sermon passage and discuss any questions that were raised from the previous sermon. And so if you're listening on YouTube, please comment or like us. And if you're listening on the podcast app, please subscribe so you can get updates. And if you have any comments or questions, please send them in. We'd love to hear from you. And you can send them by email at comms, C-O-M-M-S, @cabra.church.
So this coming Sunday, we're in Hosea chapter 2. And so often in this, what we do in staff meeting is we look at the passage and then we just share what does the passage mean, and then some personal kind of take-homes. Like, how does this apply to us? How does this speak to our hearts? Hosea 2, starting from verse 2. Plead with your mother, plead, for she is not my wife and I am not her husband, that she put away her whoring from her face and her adultery from between her breasts, lest I strip her naked, and make her as in the day she was born, and make her like a wilderness, and make her like a parched land, and kill her with thirst. Upon her children also I will have no mercy, because they are children of whoredom, for their mother has played the whore. She who conceived them has acted shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers, who give me my bread and my water, my wool and my flax, my oil and my drink. Therefore I will hedge up her way with thorns, and I will build a wall against her, so that she cannot find her paths. She shall pursue her lovers, but not overtake them, and she shall seek them, but shall not find them. Then she shall say, I will go and return to my first husband, for it was better for me then than now. And she did not know that it was I who gave her the grain, the wine, and the oil, and who lavished on her silver and gold, which they used for Baal. Therefore I will take back my grain in its time, and my wine in its season, and I will take away my wool and my flax, which were to cover her nakedness. Now I will uncover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and no one shall rescue her out of my hand. And I will put an end to all her myrrh, her feasts, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her appointed feasts. And I will lay waste her vines and her fig trees, of which she said, These are my wages which my lovers have given me. I will make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall devour them. And I will punish her for the feast days of the Baals, when she burned offerings to them, and adorned herself with her ring and jewelry, and went after her lovers, and forgot me, declares the Lord. Therefore, behold, I will allure her, and bring her into the wilderness, and speak tenderly to her. And there I will give her her vineyards, and make the valley of Achor a door of hope. And there she shall answer as in the days of her youth, as at the time when she came up out of the land of Egypt. First impressions?
Seems like a really huge contrast between verse 13 and like before verse 14 and then after verse 14, but then is it linked by a therefore? Yeah. So if I were to put it together like in terms of like a logical sequence, it seems like God's patience seems to run out because in verse 8 she does not recognize that it's I who gave her the grain and so on, and therefore I will take back my grain and take back everything, right? But then it seems that everything that God does is to help Israel, right, to realize that they are going the wrong way. So even the patience is to help them to realize, the taking away and discipline is to help them to realize. So like, I'll expose her lewdness and her nakedness, right? And so that hopefully she'll realize, and then all that is to help them to realize, to come back, and then, verse 14, therefore I forgive. It's because God's purpose is to want him to turn back to him, I think. And I think that's like, wow, God is so, so great. I can't think of words to express how like tender and loving God is, even in the act of like his kind of discipline / punishment.
Yeah. As I hear that, I take it as, he's not just trying to punish them or just discipline them. Like, there's actually a reason behind that.
Yeah.
A goal.
Yeah.
Like he wants them to actually return to him, to actually grow closer to him. It may be painful at the time, as in any discipline is, but he actually wants them to return, to respond.
Yeah, it's just what comes to my mind is the imagery is very vivid in terms of, my wife, adulterous, hungry children. It's very vivid. And it's, I think most readers will read this and saying, how does that connect to Israel? And I'm thinking, making that connection is hard because of the way that it's written. That's my first impression.
But that's what I like about Hosea, because it's so unique. There's such strong kind of family language in it, like being like Israel being a wife, the descendants of Israel being children, and God being the husband, and also a father figure. Like, it's family language that, whether you are Christian or not, whether you are in Australia or across the world, like, we can all understand what family is like and the pain that brings. But also the restoration when you discipline, either, like, so for me, if I discipline Zach well and he actually learns from it and grows from it and actually is like, returns to me and is like, I want to do what you say, Daddy, because I love you. That's like, oh, that's awesome. That brings joy. But when you're like, if he repeatedly goes the other way and just repeatedly disobeys, repeatedly does what he wants, and it's not good for him, then that leaves me exasperated. I'm just like, oh, what do I do with you? So I think that's like an analogy. That's the language we're given here in Hosea to show us just God's heart for his people. Yeah, but it is a bit weird. He's kind of husband and father.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know.
Just mixing of metaphors.
Yeah. Especially like the vivid imagery. Like, that could be really, could be quite jarring. To listen to. Especially in our context. So, like, verse 3: lest I strip her naked, kill her with thirst. Verse 5: their mother has played the whore. And it's like, far out. Like, that's just
very strong, vivid sort of graphic imagery.
Yeah. I don't know, what do we do with that? What's the take home there? I realise as well that this is a discussion between guys. So for like an outsider listening in, or a woman who's listening in, I think this passage would be heard a bit differently. Because I'm a bit more emotional or tone deaf to some of what's going on here.
Yeah, I wonder whether the purpose is to evoke the strong emotions in us, right? So that we can emotionally connect with how, like, bad turning away from God is. So rather than making statements of, you have turned away from God, and that's bad. But that's completely devoid of emotion. You just look at that and like, okay, this is fact.
Well, that's the logical argument.
Yeah.
But there's emotions involved.
Yeah. So I think this is I feel like this is evoking that emotional side, so that we have an emotional response to the ugliness of evil and sin. Yeah, like when we see injustice in the world, we have this emotional response to it, right? But if we kind of talk about it theoretically, then we don't really have the emotional response. Like
Like you mentioned sin and wickedness or thing in the world, but this passage is really relating to forgetting about God. It's equating sin. Well, we call it sin, but it's equating sin or the wickedness with forgetting about God. That's sin.
Yeah.
So which is, we never think about that. I know, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you think about the imagery here is that adultery or unfaithfulness, and in our world that seriousness has been played down. Like if someone has a divorce, that's just divorce that person, and it's nothing not that bad because the law lets me do it.
Mm.
And so, but here it's all about if you do that to God, it's like that's sinning. That's like, you know, God's gonna get rid of you. Sort of idea.
So how does this speak to us personally?
Yeah, I think for me, what Will said sort of said, I need to make how this is shocking to God, or how this, and I need to apply it for myself. How what I do that is unfaithful is shocking to God, and not downplay the seriousness of that, and say, "Oh, God will forgive me. I'll do it again." Or it's not I will do it again, but God will forgive me. But then when you get, you know, into that situation, you go, "Oh, there's nothing bad about this." So I think for me, I have to realise. I mean, like, makes me realise how little things in my life is serious in God's eyes.
Yeah, I think it's similar to the whole, like, if you don't see the depth of your sin, then you won't see the heights of God's grace, I suppose, you know, and his mercy upon us. Yeah, and so, like, you know, if I see sin as really, really, like, worse and worse and worse and worse and really bad, then when I look at Christ, like, it elevates him and exalts him more and more, and what he's done. And I think so it's on the same page as you, like being in tune with God and how he views our sin. Yeah. And then to know, you know, wow, like, God forgives, we can turn back to him. Even though we're, like, you know, all the way, like, should we stop now? Yeah. Like, God is perfectly just to turn me to dust.
Yeah.
Like,
That rhymes.
yeah. But he doesn't. That's great.
Yeah, I think for me it's like as I've been reading through Hosea, it's just showing me just how great God's love is, like, for his people. Like, he yearns for his people. He still speaks tenderly to his people. He still loves us. And yeah, like the sin of his people just keep forgetting him. They keep walking away. They keep loving other lovers. And it's like, yeah, for me, like, what I've taken out of Hosea so far has just been, yeah, like, God loves me so much, and I don't want to displease him. I'm praying that I'll stay faithful to him for the rest of my days, and to not, you know, go after other lovers, other faiths, other objects, and just to keep remembering him. I keep looking back and keep looking forwards. Yeah, and just to not, like, have a cold heart towards God. I think it'd be easy to just not respond, or to be distant or push him away. But that grieves him.
Shall we leave it at that?
Yeah.
Yeah, will you pray?
Alright. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Hosea and what the prophets writes for us. And Father, we're humbled by the magnitude of the love that you have for your people. We thank you that you do love us, and you work and you do things so that when we do are unfaithful and fall away, that you bring us back by taking the things or the blessings away, or chastising us, or just showing us what it is like without you. And in order to turn us back to you. And so we pray that in our own lives, that we see the magnitude of your love by really seeing the atrociousness of our unfaithfulness to you. And so we pray that you continue to help us see this and see how great you are. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So we just want to say thank you for all your questions. This week we are doing something a little bit different. We have over 6 questions here, so rather than going through them one by one, we're just going to share with you our conversation, our reflections as a staff team on the issue of Christian unity. And because Christian unity has all sorts of issues, all sorts of things to talk through and work out. And so rather than step through them individually, here's a look or a window into what our conversation was like.
Yeah, what does unity look like in our church today? I think that's a good question. What does it look like?
This is just the first introduction to his whole spiel on unity later on as well, right? So it's got like Corinthians 1-4 is about killing pride, worldly wisdom, and disunity. And then I'll just preach on the first 7 verses that he's launching into it. So I think he'll elaborate on more on what unity looks like. I think for us, like in this passage in particular, it's unity in mind and thought, no divisions, and agree with each other. And that's in the context of like they're quarreling. Paul's calling them to come together in a context where they're arguing because of pride, right? And so the antidote would be different to a general, what does unity look like, I think.
So you're trying to say that unity is not everyone thinking the same thing, or conformity. Yep. Unity is not conformity.
Yep.
Whereas here is unity is a group of people united in purpose.
Yep.
Although they might have differences in some things.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And I think doctrine is central to it. So you need to be united in your understanding of the gospel, and like the core doctrinal truths. And I want to argue that that makes preaching, like the Sunday sermon, very central and important in the life of the church, because that's where we are all united, sitting under the word together, right? And things like growth groups, your own devotion, meeting at 1-to-1 or in smaller groups, they're all auxiliary to the uniting effect that sitting together under the word through preaching is. Yeah. So I think that emphasizes the importance of preaching. Even though, all the other smaller group studies and your own devotion and stuff like that, they're all important. For the life of the church, I think preaching is quite central in terms of maintaining unity, because that's where we go, we agree, we sit together under the same teaching.
I wonder if part of this question as well is it's like, what if I see a Christian brother who's living in sin?
Yeah.
Is it okay to disagree with them with how they're living?
Yeah.
Because that's quite different.
Yeah.
That's not exactly what's being talked about in this part, although it comes later.
Yeah.
And so in that kind of instance, it's like, well, yeah, it is okay for us to disagree with each other. Yes, be united, because we're united in the same mind and same purpose. If we disagree on that, then that's a different kind of disagreement to... okay, if my Christian brother is living in sin, what do I do then? Why am I disagreeing with them? How do I disagree with them? That's a different kind of answer.
But that's not ununity.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't equate that to not being united.
Well, I would say that the brother who's living in sin is living a disunified life of the church.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's separated himself from the church by living in sin and outside the community standards. And so to rebuke and call him to repent is kind of bring him back into the fold of what the church is for. So for example, in Corinthians 5, where there's a sexually immoral brother, you cast him out for the sake of being able to bring him back in, because he's living outside of their standards. But I think I don't know. Maybe the question is kind of: is it okay to agree to disagree with each other about how we live under Christ? So like maybe it's the expression of doctrine, application of doctrine. How does that work? So I think there are examples of people doing things differently in 1 Corinthians as well, right? So when it talks about some people eat meat, some people don't eat meat. Some people say they can do this and or marry or not marry, and so on. And I think that's kind of like Paul going, there's a variety and there's diversity in how we live and express the faith, and it's fine. But then his kind of what's it called? His corrective over that is, well, then you don't judge the other for that in a sense.
We won't agree on absolutely everything. It would be folly to think that we'll agree on everything. With the effects of sin, we won't all think the same way. We're all broken. We're all fallen. So we will disagree.
Yeah, I think so.
But in disagreeing, does it take away unity?
Could.
Because that's the main thrust of the question, right? What does unity look like?
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what is unity, right? Because
Yeah.
is that what unity is? Because it sounds like we're trying to mix it as well. I mean, we're mixing it a little bit. In that it sounds like, okay, disagreement connects to unity because of that. But what is unity? Because if what's Paul's talking about unity, and we have different doctrines. Well, doctrine's the same in the Bible. It's how we perceive doctrine.
So hence why I think actually we shouldn't just skip one of the first questions, which is the first order, second order doctrines, and third order. So first order is like, did Jesus rise from the dead?
Yeah.
Like, that's core gospel. You deny that, I'm like, well, are you Christian? Is your church?
Yeah.
Your church isn't part of the faith. You're not a church. If it's second order, it's like infant baptism. Look, Baptists will hold a different view to Anglicans and Presbyterians. We can disagree about that and still be Christian.
But can you disagree that and be in the same church?
So then the question of denominations: why do they exist in the first place? Part of it is an expression of the faith. Part of it is also platform. Because I don't know if I can minister on a Baptist platform. Maybe I could. Like, it would be okay. But I'm pro infant baptism, and that's okay. But people will disagree with me. I don't know if they'll take me on board if I'm like, I'm pro infant baptism.
But that, I'm just saying, you still hold that. But I'm talking about to unity then in the church.
Yeah, like I wouldn't promote disunity if I was in that situation of like, oh, look, let's employ Rob to be in a Baptist church. I wouldn't be like, hey, what do you think about infant baptism? Come join my ranks. Join me. Don't join the Baptists. With it, as in, if I was doing that in the Baptist congregation, I think that'd be that would be me doing the opposite of what this is asking for.
Because trying to define it, right? Trying to define unity. And I think you're right in answering the first question is you need to put the importance first. First, what do you call it? First order doctrine, which is the gospel.
Why do we have denominations in the first place? Like, it's because there are differences. It doesn't. Well, what are those differences? It's not necessarily first order stuff, although some are. So like even just amongst Presbyterians and Anglicans, all of them are second order differences, like church governance, covenant theology, infant baptism.
To put it like a military sense or whatever, people come into the military for a united purpose, which is to save its country or its motherland or whatever, regardless of where you came from, like what nationality you are. You come into the service to defend the country that you're serving. And I think that's the unity that Paul speaks of here. We come into the Christian church to defend the Christian church or God's kingdom. And I think that's where if we can define in some way, first order is good, doctrine is defining it as unity in that way.
Yeah, and I can even show from the passage just that having the same mind, same judgment, same purpose. It's like, well, that's what is that mind? What is that purpose?
The mind of Christ.
Yeah.
But then you can draw it out and say the mind of
break
Christ.
it down into first, second, third. Yeah.
Like, I wonder whether like unity is one of those things that's like joy. Like, the whole concept where if you look for joy, you're not going to find it.
Yes.
Right? If you try to aim for joy, you're not going to get it. But then if you aim to, desire God and love others and live for His will, then you will find joy.
100%
It's
agree.
like a byproduct.
Yep.
So I wonder whether like unity is like a byproduct of Christians living together for God in love and grace, and then the byproduct is you get unity, right? And then the byproduct of living for yourself and arrogance and pride is disunity.
Yes.
Yeah. Right? So Paul says, no, I want you to be united, and this is how you do it. Kill your pride, right? Because your pride is contradictory to the life in the gospel. And he explains that in the passage, like, if you were baptized into Christ's name, you died to self, right? So there's no reason to boast in yourself anymore. And he goes on later in, I think, chapter 3, he says, like, let anyone who boast in the Lord. Like, you can't boast in yourself. So I wonder whether it's like a byproduct thing that you can't really go, this is what it is, so let's aim for it. But it's like, let's live the Christian life together and please God and go about what we should do as a church, and then we will be united.
I think so.
Yeah,
100% agree. It was the exact same thought that kept across my mind. So I wrote down, like, we maintain our unity not by aiming for unity, but by proclaiming the gospel. We maintain our unity not by following influential leaders, but by following Jesus.
Or even get bogged down by doctrines and belief.
Yeah.
Like, if you come to that same love one another more than yourself, that's the belief of doctrine will come out of that.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
yeah.
How can we handle
In
differences and
teams.
arguments better within ministry teams in light of this passage?
Yeah.
Like, if we had a disagreement, how would we handle that better in light of this passage?
And for me, I heard your view. I see some merits in it.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't hurt to get on that line. But generally that's the thing. But if I really feel like deeply against it, I'll say, what about this? And what do you think about that? But generally, most of the time, because of unity in the gospel, I would say, that sounds right. It might not be what I've thought of, but I'm happy with that.
Using us as a case study is probably fair and also unfair, because we're pretty united. We have the same mind, same purpose. So in that sense, it's probably not a fair comparison. But just on that note, it's not like we don't disagree. Like, I think disagreements get complicated once we get really emotional about it. I'm not trying to say let's not be emotional. Emotions are important. They're a gift from God. They tell us something. Let's listen to them. But at the same time, I think when it comes to disagreements, in my view anyway, it'd be a lot simpler if we were just logical about it. Like, actually, let's look at the reasons, let's look at the arguments, let's weigh it up, the merits, let's evaluate them, and then let's work out a way forward. If we can see through all the mess and all the emotions and get to that, then I think that would be a lot simpler.
Yeah. I feel like if and when we disagree, it's usually like between all good options anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because if it's just all between all good options anyway, like, I think if you just let it go and just go, well, any option's fine then, because we all came up with good options.
Yeah.
And then just go with one, and just let go of that, like, that will to win your point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm hearing from here. And like, you might have an idea, but then you think your idea is good, but you hear other just as good ideas, and if like you're fine with any of those
That's right.
options because it all meets the end goal in the first place anyway.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I really appreciate about our team is that I think there's genuine love for each other, and we trust each other. So we would say it if we disagree, say it as it is. One of the things that I remember was when to do our second Christianity Explained.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember that one. So I was pushing for let's do it as early as possible because we've got people who are keen, and if we leave it till a bit later, they might drop out somehow. And so if we have the people and we can do it, let's just do it, right? And then I think like Rob, you were like, well, it's up to the team to work out when to do it, so let's bring it to them. And the second point was, well, maybe we should space it out a little bit so that we can sustain momentum. And I think like so we can continue doing this ministry rather than like let's just do it now and then we stop doing it and then let's go and do it now. Yeah, but then I think in the end we went to the team, and the team was like, well, if there's people available and people can do it, then let's just ask. And in the end, it wasn't God's will to do it early because we weren't able, like people weren't available or something, or it just didn't end up happening. Yeah, and I thought that process was good because like I felt strongly about something, I felt heard, and I think Rob, you felt heard as well, and we hashed it out and we came to a conclusion together. And like both options are you can argue till the cows come home, like because they're both good options. Yeah. So we kind of like, yep, let's just stick with one thing and go with it, and then God worked it out.
I vaguely remember, was that over messages or phone call?
I think it was sustained through a meeting, and then or it was messages, and then we had a meeting, and we talked about it in staff meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that helps, like the fact that we have regular kind of communication.
Yeah.
And it's not just all like, here's a text message.
Yeah, yeah.
Because text messages mean that it's hard for me to respond. Like if you're just giving me like a 10-point argument on why we should run CE now, I'll be like, well, here's my 5-point argument in return.
Yeah, and then I'll be like, I've got 10 points, you got 5.
Exactly. Then it just becomes a long argument versus, hey, let's just talk about it either over the phone or in person.
Yeah.
Back then, not in person, over Zoom. And that gives us an opportunity to respond and to hear each other out. Because that's important. Like, we mentioned it and we just kind of glossed through it, but that's important. Because if a person doesn't feel heard, they're like, well, you've just dismissed me. Okay, I'm just going to argue some more until you hear me. Yeah. And then that just becomes counterproductive. So, like I think, at least my perception is we do that well. Like we argue. We do disagree. We don't argue in the sense of, shouting at each other and stuff. But we have disagreements, and that's okay. We talk about it. We talk through it. But the fact that we trust each other and love each other means we will work out the best solution for each other and for the church, and that's really cool. That's really precious.
Yeah, because I think in the end, because of trust, I know that like you're not gonna do something that's like gonna hurt the church or hurt me. Yeah, you know what I mean? Because we trust each other, and so if I have that generous assumption, and it's not an assumption because I know it's true. then it's okay to kind of commit to the process and commit to a decision that we come up with. Yeah.
I think for me, one of the things in teams is just letting the process. Letting the other opinion roll. Let it happen, even though it's a bad opinion in my view, and I disagree strongly. Sometimes I just let it roll, and then if it falls over, the team will say, okay, that's a bad decision. But if it's a good thing, then I can say that I was humble about it, and I can own up to my humility or my wrongness. So I think in a person, with a bit of maturity in a sense, and just let it roll sometimes, even though it's a bad decision.
By letting it roll, do you mean in the process of discussion, you let that person finish, or you let the decision go to its fruition?
Yeah. So in the discussion, you might have differing opinions, but it's overwhelmingly pushed back to my own opinion. So if it has opinion like push back on my own opinion, okay, I'll let it roll after discussion. So you don't cause any more friction. Well, you've caused friction a little bit already, but
Yeah, I think like if you can't have robust discussion and disagreement, then you don't get like commitment and buy-in to the decision that's made. Right? I'm just thinking about decision making process, right? So like, I think that the issue is when once you've made a decision as a team, and then each person is still kind of like, nah, I still don't agree with it. Like this is bad, and then you're bitter about it, and then you might talk to others and say, oh, the decision that Rob made, it's hasn't considered this view, and then you're just talking like amongst each other and whatever. I think that's when division is bad, right? So that's why you got to have all the disagreement and stuff on the decisions, like on the stage where you're still trying to work out the decision, and then once the decision's made, everyone's going to be like, yeah, that's what we're going to roll with, So how to do that better is once the decision is made, just make it final and just go, yeah, it is, and commit it to God. I think, and make sure that you're heard, like you voice your concern during the decision making stage. Because I think, like maybe it's an Asian thing, like when people are trying to hash out and brainstorm or discuss a decision, you might hold back your view because you don't want to contribute to conflict or something, and then the decision is made, and your view and opinion you don't think is heard, or and you don't really agree with the decision that's made, and what do? You just feel bitter about it, and then you might tell others, and that causes problems. So I think it's during decision making stage, make your view known, and I think for the team, hear each other out.
Meetings need conflict.
Actually,
you can't just all be like, hey, let's just do what the meeting leader says. Like, we actually need to all share our different views and conflict, because if we don't, then like it leads to that bitterness. You got to bring it out. How you do it, well, you can do it in a gentle way, or you can do it in a harsh and abrupt way. That's for the person to work out. I just realized as well with this question, it depends if you're leading the team or if you're within the team. Because I think if you're leading the team, then like you got to be able to
hear all the opinions.
Get everyone to contribute. And raise their points of view. Set the tone in terms of how conflict is played out. If you're within the team, then your role is there to support and to make your opinion known as well. But in the end, the hard thing about the person that's within the team is, in the end, when the final decision is made, you're all on board. It's like if you make a decision, Will, about X ministry, and I disagree, and Hian agrees, like we might argue about it, and in the end, if we still disagree, you make the final call on it because it's your position, your ministry thing. Then I'm still like, okay, no, I'm 100% agree. Like I might disagree internally here, but in terms of outside the team, I'm like, no, we're united. Like I'm with you. So I think that operates. That's a tricky one, especially like as I think of our wider staff team. There might be sometimes we have disagreements as well, but in the end, I'm for Pastor Law. I'm for our wider church leadership team. We are all united, even if inside we might disagree on X, Y, and Z. So that's for the person within the team.
And I think it's easier to commit to like a decision that you disagree with if you felt heard. And it's harder when you feel like that they just dismissed your opinion and you haven't felt heard. And so that's why it's so important in the phase of discussion that you try to make yourself heard, and that if you're the rest of the team, then you hear people out.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you need to have a time limit because otherwise you'll just be talking forever and no decisions made.
Yeah, so that's more for the person leading the meeting.
Yeah.
You could end up spending 2 hours disagreeing.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
Mm.
Probably don't want to spend 2 hours on it.
Yeah.
And also remember, we're on a bigger team. I mean, like, we're on a bigger purpose than just a team. So when a decision doesn't come your way, it's okay. I mean, like, you might not like it, but you just still work hard at it because it's a bigger thing.
Cool.
Which is unrelated. Meetings are important, and doing meetings well is important.
Oh yeah, meetings are important.
Patrick Lencioni, Death by Meeting. Short book, good read.
Good read.
Will help a lot with our meetings.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for tuning in, everyone, and we hope that you've been encouraged in our reflections on Hosea, and some of your questions might be answered about Christian unity. Please comment or ask us and message us if you have further questions for us to consider about Christian unity. I know it's a whole big topic, and we'd love to think about it more. And so do like us, subscribe, and tell others that we release our podcast every Monday, and listen in, and see ya.